Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. Today, we're diving into the future of education, how to really equip ourselves for a world, just overflowing with these wicked problems.
Oh, wicked problems. That's a term you're going to hear a lot in this deep dive. So maybe we should unpack that right away.
Yeah, it's not just about, acing those standardized tests anymore, is it?
No, not even close.
Yeah.
We're talking about those massive, messy challenges. Climate change, poverty, you name it. And the research you shared, especially from Anne-Marie Horn and Beligatamulla, suggests we might be going about solving these all wrong.
Okay, now you've got me intrigued. I skimmed their work, and it seemed like two completely different approaches. It's like collaboration versus individual creativity. How do those even fit together in this, messy world of wicked problems?
Well, the first aha moment here is realizing traditional education, with its emphasis on specialization, might actually be making these problems harder to, really crack.
Hold on, are you saying that more expertise is a bad thing?
It's not that straightforward. Think about climate change. It's not just an environmental issue, right? Horn's research actually found that solutions, like aimed solely at environmental impact, often backfired because they neglected, say, the economic ripple effects on, vulnerable communities. They were ignoring the whole social justice aspect entirely.
So it's like they're trying to solve a puzzle, but they're only looking at the red pieces.
Exactly. And that's where the wickedness of these problems comes in. They just don't fit into those neat academic boxes. They
Yeah.
demand that we connect the dots between disciplines. This is where Horn's idea of, transdisciplinary learning comes in.
Transdisciplinary, that sounds like a superhero name, doesn't it? But what does it actually mean, for students in a classroom?
Okay, so picture this. A classroom, they're tackling climate change, right? But it's not just the environmental science kids. We've got future engineers, economists, you've got sociologists all working together.
Mm.
Each student is bringing their own unique perspective, their own, experiences to the table.
Okay, that's a really cool image. No more academic silos, everyone's learning from each other. But in that scenario, what is a teacher even doing? Because it can't be an expert in every subject, right?
Right. And Horn's research really emphasizes a shift here. It's going from lecturer to facilitator. They're not there to spoon feed information, but to guide the process. Asking those thought-provoking questions, helping students connect the dots between all those different fields.
So it's less about memorizing textbooks and more about real world problem solving, right? Like we're
Yeah.
talking like tackling case studies, brainstorming, maybe even like friendly debates.
You got it. The classroom itself transforms. It's like a microcosm of the real world.
Yeah.
Students can grapple with, the complexities of these wicked problems, but in a safe, collaborative environment.
Exactly. And this is where Beligatamulla's research adds a fascinating layer to this. See, Horn, she's all about collaboration, right? But then Beligatamulla, he comes in and reminds us that individual creativity, that's just as crucial for tackling these wicked problems. Okay, I'm all ears because when I hear Beligatamulla and wicked problems, I'm not necessarily thinking like individual creativity. So help me connect those dots. What's the connection there?
Well, Beligapalula, he's a huge proponent of design thinking.
Okay, and before you go any further, I was just going to say, isn't that for graphic designers, architects, isn't that their thing?
Right, exactly. And that's the misconception, right? It's not about aesthetics, It's a problem-solving framework. It's a mindset, really, that empowers anyone to be creative. And it's about empathy. It's about brainstorming those wild ideas, building prototypes, testing them out, and, not being afraid to fail along the way.
So less about finding that one right answer and more about embracing the entire journey, all that experimentation, learning from those inevitable missteps we all make. That almost sounds, I don't know, counterintuitive to formal education in a way.
And yet it's so incredibly relevant when you think about, the unpredictable nature of these wicked problems, right? There is no textbook solution for a global pandemic. There's no textbook solution for climate change. And Beligatawilla's research, it really highlights how this design thinking, it cultivates this, he calls it creative confidence.
Ooh, creative confidence.
Oh, yeah,
Like
yeah.
that. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's that self-belief, believing in your own ability to generate those ideas, to really innovate, even when you don't have all the answers laid out in front of you. It's what empowers you to look at this, seemingly insurmountable problem and say, okay, well, where do we even begin?
So we've got Horn over here. She's like, teamwork makes the dream work. And then we have Beligatamulla who's saying, but don't forget that individual creative confidence is key. And those just seem like two very different, paths, So how do those two approaches, how do they coexist in this new world of education that we're moving towards?
And see, that right there, that's the million-dollar question. It's not about picking a side. It's not about collaboration versus individual creativity. It's about recognizing this incredible synergy that's just waiting to be unlocked when you can blend those two approaches.
Okay, now you're blowing my mind because it's like, what's a good example? It's like peanut butter and jelly, right? You've got your peanut butter, you've got your jelly, two distinct flavors, but then bam, you combine them and it creates something infinitely better.
Exactly. Imagine you've got a student who has really honed their own creative confidence through design thinking. Maybe they tackled a social issue in their own community. Now they're bringing that experience, that fearlessness, to a team, a collaborative team with students from all these different disciplines. Can you see how powerful that could be?
Yeah, I'm starting to see it. It's like they're not just showing up with like the knowledge from their specific field, but they have this whole arsenal of problem-solving skills and they're ready to think outside the box.
That's the creative integration mindset in action right there. And that's the ability to not only generate those innovative ideas, but to analyze them with rigor, connect them with other fields, really bring structure to those aha moments and turn them into real-world solutions.
Okay, I love it. But how do we nurture this creative integration mindset? We can't just cross our fingers and hope that students will magically develop this, right?
Right. Remember that concept we talked about briefly earlier, the iterative knowledge mapping?
Yeah.
That's one tool that could be really instrumental in actually, developing this mindset.
Okay, so remind me, how does that work? Like, give me the SparkNotes version. Okay, so remind me, how does that work? Like, give me the SparkNotes version.
So it's essentially like a dynamic mind map, right?
Yeah.
Students, they visually map out their understanding of the problem, but they're pulling in knowledge from all these different disciplines we've been talking about.
So they're connecting the dots between, say, the environmental impact of a solution, but also the economic viability, the social implications, all in one visual.
Exactly. But here's where it gets really interesting. It's iterative. So as they learn new things, they test solutions, and the map itself actually evolves. They're adding new connections, maybe pruning away information that's not so relevant anymore, and bam, those core insights, those aha moments, those start to emerge.
So it's like taking all those puzzle pieces from before, all those different colors, and finally you can see that bigger picture starting to form.
Precisely. And that very skill, right?
Yeah.
Being able to connect the dots, seeing that bigger picture, that's really what this whole creative integration mindset is all about. And it's what's going to equip this next generation to really tackle these wicked problems head on.
Okay, I'm convinced you've painted an incredibly compelling vision. But I have to ask, how realistic is it to expect this kind of shift in education? Because it feels like a monumental task when you really think about it.
It is a big task, but it's not about, overhauling the entire system overnight. The research actually highlights that we're already seeing these little pockets, these little seeds of change happening. You see schools experimenting with these interdisciplinary projects. They're incorporating design thinking. They're empowering students to be those active learners rather than just those, passive recipients of information.
So it's about nurturing those seeds of change, those little glimmers of something, really transformative.
Exactly. And I think, the more we have these conversations, the more we share these stories, these successes, the more momentum we build towards that future.
That's what I love about these deep dives. It's not just, looking at the research, it's a call to action for educators, policymakers, parents, really everyone listening, right?
Couldn't agree more. And you know what? It's not just limited to these traditional classroom settings either. These ideas, this whole creative integration mindset, it's so relevant for workplaces, for community organization, even in our own personal lives.
So for all of our listeners out there, because many of them might not be educators, how can they apply these ideas? How can they embrace this mindset in their own lives? What would you say to them?
Well, that's the exciting part, right? The applications are limitless. Imagine approaching a challenge at work, but not just from your little silo, your specific role. What if you considered all the other angles, that interconnectedness of it all? Or even in your personal life, what if you tackled a problem with that same creative confidence, that willingness to, experiment, to learn from those mistakes?
So it's about breaking down those internal silos that we all build in our own thinking, this is how I've always done it, mindsets, and embracing, that beautiful messiness of creativity and collaboration.
Exactly. And who knows, that little shift in perspective, that willingness to see the world through a new lens, that might just be what sparks those aha moments, the moments that lead to real change.
This has been such a thought-provoking deep dive. Thank you so much for taking us on this incredible journey into the future of education and, like you said, even beyond.
The pleasure was all mine. And remember, the future isn't something we simply adapt to. It's something that we create.
Yeah.
And it starts with reimagining how we learn, how we think, how we connect with the world around us.
And on that note, we'll leave you, our listeners, with one final provocative thought. What wicked problem are you facing in your own life, and how could this creative integration mindset help you find a solution? Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.